All right. We are here recording our second session. I'm James Gregg here with John Wires and Gregg Huebner. Excited to talk a little bit more about their first syndication, which was in the beautiful town of Lee's Summit, Missouri, Somerset Villas. But before we jump in, guys, I want to get to know you a little bit more, let our viewers and listeners get to know you a little bit more. So why don't you go ahead and each one of you give me maybe two or three things, experiences, thought processes, whatever, that prepared you to put together this deal.
Gregg, you can go first.
Yeah, sure. I guess, it's a combination of things. So, probably just being around it and actually doing construction work on my first rental property back in 2004 and just learning from experience. And then, as I scaled up, it was probably listening to podcasts for at least maybe 3.5 years, and just really understanding all aspects of the deal. I was stationed overseas. I wasn't in the military, but for my tech job back then, and didn't really have the ability to invest in the U.S., but just soaked up everything I could. So I really became a knowledgeable expert very quickly, and when I got back to the U.S.
Cool. Nice. What about you, John?
Yeah, I would say similar items, a lot of podcasts, a lot of personal rentals that, we all do construction on. And also, I'd say other investors. We hold monthly real estate investor meetups where we learn with other investors like ourselves, and we get good ideas from them and experiences. So I'd say definitely a conglomeration of all those items, real-world experiences.
Cool. And do you want to give us a shameless plug for the Facebook group that's kind of around that meetup?
Yeah, it's a KC Capital Group. You can just search it up there and just join, and admins will add you. And we have the groups meet up on the last Wednesday of each month, although the times for November, December are pushed a little bit, due to the holidays. So you'll see those announcements on there. But there's a good group of people there. They're serious and usually more experienced, but that doesn't mean, new investors can't join.
Nice. All right. Well, so guys, for this segment, I wanted to dive into a little bit about the financing. And there's obviously two parts of the money. We've got the debt. We've got the equity, both very, very important. With one, you're not going to get the whole deal. You obviously need to have both. So let's jump into the financing a little bit first. I got some notes over here. So Gregg, I'm going to throw this one to you. Tell me, this is probably a little bit different than financing a $60,000, $100,000 rental house. So what's the process like when you're shopping for financing for a $2-3 million apartment building? And how did you start that conversation with the banks and lenders?
Yeah, absolutely, James. So again, I was fortunate enough to have started developing some relationships, and John was as well, with some of those debt lenders. And really the process is very similar to the approach we've taken to underwrite a deal. They have a whole underwriting team, and they take the information that we give them, the seller gives them, as we continue through the process, the appraisal, et cetera, and they're working for us and trying to get us the best deal we can, which is great. But there's also constraints based on the lender, especially if you go with an agency debt versus a bridge loan or some other debt that has a little bit looser financing criteria. So and underwriting constraints. So really the process is a lot different. You're actively engaged, at some points almost on a daily basis, via email or phone calls with them versus, financing a house. You kind of do a few things up front, sign some papers, get the appraisal, and then you wait. Until things close. I mean, even on a hard money deal, there's still that gap of time before you go to the title company to close and everything like that. And so where you're much more actively engaged in the larger financing aspects with larger deals.
Okay, gotcha. And then also, I'd imagine being more engaged and having more of a kind of a two-way dialogue with the lender. I would imagine that you probably get a little bit more into the business plan, the rehab budget, how all those things kind of tie into the financing. So can you kind of give us some detail about kind of what the business plan was, how that tied into the financing, what the lenders thought about it, and sort of just how that all tied together with the financing you guys came up with?
Yeah, so for this deal, we didn't finance any of the improvements for the
Okay.
property. We raised the money for that aspect, but really they focused on the current income day one, and then what our potential projected expenses would be, going out 3, 4, 5 years. So, and again, if we would have incorporated some of those improvements into the loan, those would have been factored in. I mean, they did ask us what we plan to do with the property, and what those potential costs would be for unit upgrades and everything like that. They also do send out an inspection company. I think we mentioned it previously. The insurance sends out an inspector, the lender sends out an inspector, and so there's going to be some things that they're actually going to hold back in escrow until we get the repairs done. So either you need to make sure you have enough buffer with the funds that you've raised, which I think John will talk about a little bit more, to accommodate for 50, 75, 100K, maybe more, depending on the size of the property and just the amount of deferred maintenance on the property. The things that the lender is looking for are more safety oriented concerns, liability concerns, things like that, than actual you need to replace the roof because it's falling apart.
Okay. And now I want to kind of go back to one thing you said there. You said that the lender was looking at your day one income and then projecting out expenses over the first few years. So that seems a little bit different than what I might look for a single family rental, something like that. Did that come back and bite you guys, or did you kind of work through that okay?
And just to clarify, so that's from an agency debt perspective. From a bridge lender, again, the underwriting constraints are a little bit different, and so you might have a little bit more flexibility there. But from an agency perspective, that's really the policy, because they want to make sure you can cover the debt service coverage ratio, 1.25-ish.
From day one.
From day one, yeah, absolutely. So no, that did hurt us a little bit. We ended up getting a 10-year loan where they actually underwrite the deal at 5% interest instead of, I think, 4.25-ish is what we got it at. And so versus if we would have went with a 12-year loan, that would have underwritten it at the right interest level. So we maybe would have gotten a few more percentage points of interest. So we honestly didn't get 80% LTV on this deal, but we got enough to close the deal, and we were successful enough with a capital raise and with our overall business plan to so far be successful.
Okay, nice. Now I've got one more question for you, kind of to wrap this segment up. John, I'm coming for you next, so don't get too bored. But again, wrapping up, how did you end up picking the loan, the broker, even the type of loan after you kind of presented with some of these options?
Yeah, I think it just came down to comfort with relationships that we had established so far. There's a lot of I guess brokers out there that are going to agencies, so the pricing and terms were relatively similar from that aspect. So it really just came down to relationships primarily, and the great thing about just being involved in moving forward is that we've established relationships, but we've also generated some new relationships too for future deals. Nice.
Okay. Well, cool. That's a nice primer on the debt side. So thanks, Gregg. Next up, equity. So John, coming over to you here. Raising the money. Give us the high level. Where did the funds come from for this purchase?
Yeah. So this one was primarily funded from, I would say, investor colleagues, friends, and other people from the meetups that we have monthly. But that's primarily the group that we're pulling from. Obviously, it depends on if you're doing a 506B versus C raise. But a lot of the funds came from prior relationships and people we work with frequently in the real estate investing world. We're a smaller community here in Kansas City, so everyone knows each other pretty well and sees each other regularly.
Okay. And just for the viewers that don't know the difference in what you're talking about there, a 50...
506B is for the unaccredited and C is accredited.
Okay, gotcha. So that just looks to someone's income or net worth, whether or not they qualify to invest in the program. Okay.
The biggest thing is, one of the biggest things is advertising, and obviously accredited investors having minimum financial net worth and income coming in.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarification there for us. All right, next up, so you're out pitching the deal to the investors. What was the biggest concern that you ran across? What were the most asked questions that you had to deal with?
Yeah, so for a lot of our investors, they're used to, their personal rentals, more of an active state versus this passive partnership opportunity. So they just want to know how it all works as far, more than just the returns, how updates are done, how payments are made, what's the business strategy, because you're putting the deal in other people's hands. And also, probably most important is sponsor experience and also the property management team. So all those things, they could be put in definitely in a Q&A document as far as how many questions we answered. As many hours spent on the phone figuring this out. But the good thing is these type of group investment syndication are getting a little bit more popular, and we have we have people coming in for new investments, and they're already educated on these topics.
Okay. And just as kind of an aside, you mentioned a lot of the folks that you're working with were sort of transitioning from like an active, I do real estate, I buy houses, to moving into this type of syndication. What's the primary driver that you saw that made someone want to make that move?
As I mention all the time, it's usually scalability. There's only so much time we all have as we develop families, other interests and hobbies. Because at the beginning, everyone gets excited. Real estate is an opportunity that is open up for definitely a lot of people out there versus, running some Fortune 500 companies. So the barrier to entry is pretty low. But after a while, people get, I'd say burnt out, or they don't figure out how to scale, maybe due to a lack of funds or education, experience, all those items. So they're looking for passive income for the future so they can utilize their time on things they want to do, but still keep up their cash flow and overall returns. Right now, since the market's so competitive, even with myself, managing my own personal rentals, I'm getting better returns on these apartment communities versus some rentals. But again, some people have some extra time or pleasure for paying, so they might do rentals themselves on the side.
Oh, and I feel like that's another video series, not going to be on this channel. Okay, and then
that's probably a thing for all of us.
Yeah,
that we take part in.
Enjoying the pleasure from the pain.
Yeah, for some reason wanting to continue to manage your own rentals, but we'll just have to be forced out of it at some point.
Well, like you said, eventually there kind of comes a point to, can you scale? If you've got a full-time job, does it make sense to go buy 20 single-family houses, or do you just put money into these types of vehicles that can help you grow and enjoy cash flow and depreciation, etc., without the work? So
right.
Okay. Now, last question for you, John, kind of on the equity side. I wanted to ask about starting those conversations, and this is just kind of out of the blue. As you're discussing that, you mentioned that you're pitching this to people that you already know, you're already working with at the meetups. How does that work? Give us like the 1-minute version of tips to start that conversation if you want to start syndicating.
So What I'd say that's pretty important as far as, getting people to get into this endeavor with yourself that they may know, but even other investors they're partnering with is obviously the trust. Even learning all the nuances of how syndication works. So you need to spend the time with people to make sure they understand the facets in and out and the process of how all this works, because there's usually a 2-year refi, 5-year hold. It could be plus or minus a couple years depending on how the market lays out or the project pans out. So you want to make them feel comfortable with that. You want to develop the trust, and then also figure out their need as far as wanting to get in investments, the whys and the wants.
Okay.
But
perfect.
But I would start out with that. Definitely making sure they're comfortable with the process and learning their pain points.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, John. And now, just kind of wrapping up, Gregg, I want to go back to you before you get so bored you start folding laundry. What were some of your key takeaways with the if you were going to tell somebody else starting syndication, if you were going to go back and tell yourself 5 years ago, here's how to get in, what would you tell yourself for money raising and for dealing with finance on this type of thing?
Yeah, I think anything. You guys heard me say it often. It's identifying your highest and best use, and then partnering with the people that can complement you. So you can't go this alone. I think you're even doing something on a smaller scale, you really can't go it alone. You just don't have the time to really do it all, and the ability to actually turn and use the velocity of money that needs to happen to get you to scale. So, figure out what you really enjoy doing. Figure out what you don't enjoy doing or not comfortable with, and then find people that can complement you. So, yeah, even it's going to take, you have to get out of your skin a little bit and go network and everything like that. But it doesn't mean that you have to go out and raise, $3 million, every 3 months either. You could be really good at handling insurance or doing the financing or there's a myriad of other aspects, just handling all the renovations on the projects. Maybe you're an ex-contractor or really have an eye for design detail or something like that. There's a lot of different things that you can incorporate into this. It's really a partner driven, team-driven environment from a multifamily real estate perspective.
Okay. That's a good tip, and one I've heard before too. So nice to hear that reiterated in a slightly different way. John, okay, back to you. Same question. What are the key takeaways you'd give your younger self or someone else starting it in syndication?
Well, I hit on a few of these. It's definitely your network. If I could start again, it would definitely be perhaps passing up some opportunities to get into the smaller real estate to develop the network with high net worth individuals, because like Gregg said, it's a team sport. Whether it's your partners in the group investment syndication or partners in finance, to take down these bigger deals, which is the reason that makes it all worth it. You definitely need a few people on the team just for scalability reasons. And then hitting on the finding investors part is definitely figuring out what that particular investor partner is looking for, because we've partnered with different types of investors. Anyone from doing passive W-2 jobs that's not interested in being more active. They just want the returns and updates, to people who are currently active that maybe want to get deeper into the syndication model, where they'll also invest, but maybe for some extra insight of how this process works, and they could just be personally intrigued, of how the process works. But you just need to find the main purpose as to how can you convince them to give up what they're doing, or I should say invest in tandem with what they're doing for a long-term scalability process. So that's what I would say as far as if I could go back and redo it again, I'd definitely concentrate on these items.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. That just about does it here. We've gone a little bit over, so I apologize for that. But again, Gregg, John, thank you both so much for being here and sharing your wisdom from this deal.
Thanks, Gregg.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, James. Yep. Bye.
Bye.